whatever they're cooking up back there at the PlayStation Store marketing department. I don't even know if that's a real department at Sony. Nonetheless, want to go over some of the great deals under the price of $20 that are available right now. A lot of great deals available. Got like over 15 deals to go over in this video, so let's just get right into it. Let's start things off with Scarlet Nexus, 75% off for $14.99. This is a game that I constantly go to bat for. Scarlet Nexus is just a great JRPG. It's got two playable main characters in Yuito and Kasane, and the routes are very, very different, so you really want to go through this game twice, and with that in mind, the game will probably take you 45 to 50 hours to complete. There's bonus content and things like that that can extend the experience. Great soundtrack, great battle style. The real downside to Scarlet Nexus is a lot of the story is told through visual novel style presentation where there's not full-fledged cutscenes. There are some of that, but it's few and far between given that the majority of the game, the story is told through the visual novel aesthetic, which I think looks great. And I find it acceptable, but some people might just find that a little bit jarring, especially if they haven't played VNs in the past. Nonetheless, $14.99 for Scarlet Nexus is great, and of course, when you're playing the gameplay is in the world itself and everything like that. It's not like an on-rails VN or anything of that sort, so $15, great price for Scarlet Nexus, definitely a strong recommendation here. There are a couple of demos available if you do want to check that out before buying the game. Next up, we have the Game Bakers' Haven, which is 50% off for $12.49. This is a co-op driven RPG, story-driven RPG. Interesting battle style that does get a little bit simplistic. This is a game that has a co-op focus. You can play it solo, but the idea of the game is to play it with your significant other, and it's very enjoyable in that regard. Like, if you want to get somebody to into this game, it's super easy, so they're not gonna, find it too difficult or anything like that. And the game itself is gorgeous, has great sound direction, great art style. $12.49 I think is a pretty decent price for a game that, if you're into story-heavy games, you'll like Haven quite a bit. And again, if you're playing it with somebody else, I think that's how you're gonna get the best experience possible. So bear that in mind. $12.49, not a bad price at all. Next up, Final Fantasy X and X-2 HD Remaster, 50% off for $12.49. Also available through PlayStation Plus Extra. We'll have a couple of games that are available on Plus Extra, but nonetheless, FF10 is an absolutely iconic game. It came out back in early 2000, and that absolutely still shows in this HD remaster. However, FF10 is still a great game. Battle system is great. Soundtrack is tremendous. That battle theme is just fantastic. Great boss fights. Great story as well. FF10 is an all-time classic. I wasn't as high on FF10-2, but a lot of people did like 10-2 as well. And the fact is, you're getting both games for $12.49. That is a ridiculous amount of content for your money. So definite and easy recommendation there. And if you never played FF10, great reason to pick it up. Just do bear in mind, early 2000s title, early PlayStation 2 game, absolutely has some stiff animations, absolutely has some questionable voice acting, and yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Blitzball, but I was talking to my boy the other day, and he loved Blitzball. I didn't know that there was this fandom of Blitzball, of people that actually enjoyed Blitzball. Nonetheless, the main game, I think, is great, so check it out. A couple of Assassin's Creed games to recommend. The Ezio Collection, $11.99. AC4 Black Flag Gold Edition, $15. Ezio Collection is great. It's the mainline Assassin's Creed 2 titles, AC2 Brotherhood, I should say AC Brotherhood, and Revelations. I thought by Revelations, I was like, all right, Ezio, I got your story, but they did add a little nice wrinkle in Revelations that did entice the player a little bit more. AC2 is tremendous. Brotherhood, mind you, is super, super easy, but a very good game in its own right, and Revelations is decent as well, so all three for $12 is great. AC4, I constantly rave about this game. I would kill for a next-gen upgrade for AC4 to get that game running at 60 frames per second. Alas, it is a tremendous game. Naval combat is great. Edward Kenway is, in my opinion, one of the more underrated main characters in just gaming. I know everybody gravitates towards Ezio when you talk about Assassin's Creed, but Edward was just a fantastic main character, an absolutely hilarious main character as well. $15 for AC4, the Gold Edition, I think is a good pickup, so check that out as well for sure. Next up, another JRPG, Tokyo Xanadu EX Plus, 80% off for $12. I will often see people compare Tokyo Xanadu to Persona, and I can definitely see the comparisons. It's just, that's a dangerous comparison to make because you're setting a very high bar for Tokyo Xanadu, because this game is not at the quality level of Persona. It's a good JRPG. Persona, most people would consider to be a masterclass in JRPG development. Has a pretty good story, has a pretty good cast of characters, nothing too blow away, but honestly, it's a well-made, competent JRPG. Like, that's what I can say about it. It's well done in every regard. So, definitely has a little bit of that vibe, and if you are a fan of JRPGs, you'll probably like the game quite a bit. It's just not worth full price, but at 12 bucks, I think it's a good pickup, so I would check it out. Next up, we have Ys Memories of Celceta. Obviously, Ys 8 and Ys 9 are the games that are really in the Ys popularity these days, but Memories of Celceta was a re-release of a game on PlayStation Vita, and I played Memories of Celceta way back when it came out on the Vita, and really enjoyed it. I mean, Ys is Ys. They're always gonna be pretty solid games, and Memories of Celceta absolutely does show its age, but Ys has never been like a technical juggernaut by any stretch of the imagination. And by the way, Ys 8 is even on the PlayStation Vita, so the PS Vita was pushing some good visuals, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, $12 is a little pricey, but, you know, these Ys titles do hold up in price. Like, Ys 8 and Ys 9 still go for a pretty penny, although those games are available in Plus Extra, so take that for what it's worth. Next up, we have Zero Escape, the Nonary games, 60% off for $12. Zero Escape is awesome. You want to play these games sequentially. They are very much like the Danganronpa style visual novel mystery games, but incredibly engrossing, incredibly atmospheric, and incredibly compelling narratives. I actually have, like, a sealed copy of 999 with the original box art on the Nintendo DS. I don't know why I have that, I just do, but nonetheless, this was the way that I first experienced these games, and they're quite good. Very compelling from a narrative standpoint. And again, when you come from a Spike Chunsoft story-driven game, you're usually in for something pretty compelling. So if you like Danganronpa, you're gonna like this as well. And again, very engaging from a story standpoint, pretty dark as well. So keep that in mind. Next up, we have the Middle-earth The Shadow Bundle. This includes Middle-earth Shadow of War, the complete edition, as well as Shadow of Mordor. Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor are both available through PlayStation Plus Extra. However, you do not get the definitive edition of Shadow of War like you would in this bundle, so bear that in mind. Both of these games are solid open world action adventure games, good stories, a lot of content. You know, these are games that people are always just going to gravitate towards these style of games. You know, big budget open world titles, quality visuals. Yeah, check them out. A satisfying combat as well. I'm not a big Lord of the Rings guy, but these games were pretty enjoyable, so $10.49 for both seems pretty good. Unless you have Plus Extra, you can just play it that way. Next up, Odin Sphere Left Tracer, 75% off for $15. I believe this has been on sale since the last wave, but wanted to give this another mention. Vanillaware deserves more love for their games, and Odin Sphere is a great title that got some love in the PS2 era. It actually became a greatest hits title, but nonetheless, it's not a game a lot of people talk about these days, but it's a fantastic action RPG, great visual style, solid story, and I feel like the visual style is still good looking in 2023. Like, honestly, these games age really well. Like, you go back and play Muramasa, that game looks really good as well. So, Odin Sphere, $15, I think is a good buy. It's just when it came out at $60, you're talking about an upgraded release of a PS2 game. So, you know, $60 for that is a little bit of a hard sell, but $15, I'm down with that. Next up, Ruined King, a League of Legends story, 50% off for $15. Yes, League of Legends is the most toxic video game of all time, or at least the most toxic video game that I have ever played. Like, literally, I don't think I've ever played anything more toxic than League, but League does have quite a bit of lore attached to it. I know everybody loves the Arcane television series. Ruined King is a good game as well. It centers around some of the fan favorites. If you played League in the past, you probably are familiar with characters such as Yasuo, Ahri. Misfortune is really at the helm of the story here, but Ruined King is a great RPG. You don't even have to like League. Obviously, it'll enhance your enjoyment out of the game, but it's just a well-made RPG with a good story that I think most people are going to enjoy, and like the League character designs are already really good, so, you know, when you look at a character like Yasuo, you're going to be like, oh, this dude looks pretty cool, and yeah, Yasuo's a pretty cool character, as toxic as Yasuo players can be in League itself. Well, that's why I don't play that game anymore, but nonetheless, $15 for Ruined King I think is a great deal. We were supposed to get a PlayStation 5 release of this game, and it's 30 FPS on PS4, so that's a bummer. I don't know if that PS5 version just got quietly canceled, because this game came out like over a year ago at this point. It came out in late 2021. But nonetheless, I don't know if that's ever gonna happen. Hopefully they do more games like this, because there's a lot of lore that you can explore within League. I know the development studio, Airship Syndicate, is working on something entirely different right now, but they are gonna do more League-oriented games. I know Echo's getting his own game, but something of this RPG style I think could do quite well, and I really enjoyed my time with this, so definitely would give that a recommendation. And if you played League in the past, I'm not saying you like the game, or if you harbor hatred towards the game, you probably don't harbor hatred towards towards like the characters and the lore and stuff like that. That's executed really well in this game, in my opinion. Next up, we have Detroit Become Human Digital Deluxe Edition, 50% off for $15. It includes Detroit Become Human, but not more notably, but why it's a little bit more expensive is you got Heavy Rain as well. Heavy Rain was a quality game, in my opinion. Absolutely shows its age, but I remember when that game came out on the PlayStation 3 back in 2010, like, that game got really, really stellar reviews, and I remember really liking it. I think I rented it back in the day because I wasn't sold on that Quantic Dream style of experience at the time, but yeah, I had a great time with that game. Detroit, I think, is a better game, especially because, you know, Detroit came out back in like 2018, 2019, so obviously as far as aging goes, Detroit looks a lot better. And Detroit tackles some mature thematics as well. Heavy Rain's like pretty wild. Like, Heavy Rain's got a wild narrative. And obviously with these games, I've said it before, but I recommend you guys to play through them initially blind and then go back and play through them again if you are interested. Next up, Alan Wake Remastered, 50% off for $14.99. Look, Alan Wake is another one of those games that, from a gameplay standpoint, it's not revolutionary. It's a pretty basic third-person title, although you do have the flashlight gimmick going on. It's pretty simplistic in that regard. Narratively and atmospherically, I think this game is awesome. I think that's where this game really shines. It is relatively short, and that was really the issue when this game initially came out on the 360. It was like a 7 to 8 hour game, and, you know, nobody was trying to drop $60 on this title. But, yeah, for $15, you got the DLC as well. And I wasn't crazy about the DLC, but it was fine. So, yeah, I would check it out at this price point. Next up, we have Judgment, 60% off for $16. This is a game that I think is really good and a good way to get into the RGG titles. It is available through Plus Extra. This is the PS5 version of the game, by the way. Unfortunately, buying the PS4 version doesn't get you the PS5 version and vice versa, but nonetheless, Judgment's got a lot of content. It's got great gameplay. It's got an English dub, which is pretty notable given that the Yakuza games do not, so that might be a barrier of entry for those Yakuza titles. Like, let's say you pick up Yakuza 0, might be a barrier of entry for you. But Judgment, on the other hand, it was built ground up for the PS4. It's got English voiceovers, and you're starting off a new story here, so you can get into it. Really good main character. Hope they do more with this IP. I don't know if they are, but yeah, $16 here. Really good, really lengthy game as well. Next up, we got Dragon Ball FighterZ Ultimate Edition, 85% off for $16.49. This includes Dragon Ball FighterZ as well as the Character Pass. That's, I believe, Season 1, so that'll be like 8 additional characters, I believe. DB FighterZ is getting added to PlayStation Plus Extra, but it is the base game. You guys know the deal with fighting games. They have a gratuitous amount of DLC these days. I guess that's the gimmick of, you know, how they keep it rolling instead of doing, like, constant releases. I believe they wrapped up the DLC content for FighterZ, though, so, you know, all of it is out. Yeah, it's a really stylish fighter. It's made by Arc System Works, who always do really stylish fighting games, and that's no different with DB FighterZ. It's a well-made technical fighter. I don't really get in the weeds of getting competitive with these games, but, you know, they're fun. I'm a Dragon Ball fan, and for this price, I think it's pretty good. Next up, we got Sackboy: A Big Adventure, 67% off for $19.79. This is the lowest we've seen for this game, which I think is a pretty good price. This isn't Little Big Planet. This is just a charming platformer, but it's a well-designed platformer. I wouldn't spend $60 on it, but at you know, I say I wouldn't spend $60 on it, but I was a sucker and spent $60 on it. You guys aren't suckers, so don't spend $60 on it. You can spend $19.79. At some point, it will get added to PlayStation Plus Extra. It's a first-party game. It's more of a matter of when rather than if. But, you know, it came out over 2 years ago, and it still hasn't been added, so we'll see if it does get added. It should. It's a first-party game, and generally all first-party games do get added, so bear that in mind. But if you want a accessible platformer, this is a pretty good one. And lastly, give a recommendation to this game every now and again, Disco Elysium: The Final Cut. 50% off for $19.99. Would like to see this game a little bit cheaper, given that the PC version is readily available for $9.99. Nonetheless, Disco Elysium is a really great narrative-driven game, methodical storytelling, slower-paced game, not for everyone. If you can't get into a slower-paced story with a lot of decision-making and a lot of reading and a lot of dialogue, that's what this game is. It's super dialogue-heavy, so it's not going to be for everyone, but once it gets going, man, it's an incredibly compelling game that has some of the best writing that you're going to see out of a video game, which it needed to. I mean, that's the heart and soul of this game, so the writing needed to be top-notch. Well, it is top-notch and blow away in a lot of regards when you compare it to generally gaming in general. This is just really well done. Not to say other games have bad writing, but this is just at a very high level. I like the presentation style, the art style, all of that I thought was really good, and more of a mature game. $19.99 I think is a good price, also incredibly replayable, so there you go with that. Links to all of these deals, as always, will be in the description box below. We are wrapping up this sale. I think this